Thank you all. Thank you for those who traveled to be here with us this weekend. Thank you for all who create this wonderful family that we have. And this weekend is really a celebration of spiritual family more than just relationship. And this, I think, is one of the most important things in the world right now, for people to feel they belong, they have people that care about them, that have their back, all those things. So just thank you all for coming, and thank you for those who have been here for a long time and those who have come more recently. What amazes me is, having been here from the beginning, you think, well, everybody who's part of this family is here, and then someone comes and says, oh my God, you were the missing piece, and then the next person comes, why did it take you so long? And so it's like, I don't know, it's like a kaleidoscope when you look in it, and there's all the little pieces, then they become a beautiful picture, and then some fall into place. It's ever changing and beautiful. And honestly, from our hearts, we thank you for creating this family that of service and self-offering. I mean, so much is going now into preparing for the Tulip Festival, springtime in Ananda, and all the service that goes into that. But people come maybe for a few hours. You can sit down, you don't have to stand up.
It's very informal
today. It's going to be really informal today.
You can sit down, don't lay down. It's not that informal.
And don't bring popcorn in.
Yeah.
But it just, people come to the tulips maybe for an hour, maybe a few hours. But honestly, it changes their lives to feel that such a place exists. Just the beauty and the harmony. So thank you all, and thank you. We have a wonderful family, more on genetic terms. You know, we've had very nice parents, brothers, sisters, children, grandchildren. We're very grateful for that, and they're all wonderful people. But the spiritual family is more clearly a gift from God. So we thank you for that. And
just to let you know, we're going to have a couple of songs, and then Devi and I will talk just briefly, each of us a little more generally, and then we're going to rearrange. We're going to sit down, and we're going to talk kind of about our relationship, a little bit reminiscing, but not reminiscing in a nostalgic way, reminiscing about the different phases that we've gone through and some of the lessons we've learned that are applicable to this topic.
And we especially want to welcome our friends from New Zealand, who, you want to stand, because not everybody knows. Thank you. They have a wonderful group there. Shanti supports them. Devarshi and Vasudeva were just there doing programs. And they didn't know, I think, that this weekend what was happening, but good timing.
Good.
Okay, so I think that's all. So in the second part, we're going to just talk about phases of our life and what we learned. And anyway, it'll be fun. And then our family of singers is going to come up now.
Lord, may we serve you all our days, ever rejoice to sing your praise, as we together your wisdom seek. Charge us with truth whene'er we speak. Lord, may we ever know your will. Come to us when our hearts are still, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve. Life is a dream, time like a stream. Sometimes a friend helps us ascend up from life's cares to the sky. Love is a star, though shining afar. It can guide us and help us toward light to draw nigh. Love is a star, though shining afar. It can guide us and help us toward light to draw nigh.
Perfect choices. Perfect choices.
Beautiful. Devi was just saying, either yesterday afternoon or this morning, that song, Life is a Dream, kind of captures everything, you know. The time moves on and life does seem more and more like a dream. So, as I said, Devi and I will talk just briefly about kind of more generally purpose of life and how relationships fit into that. And then we'll come together and sit down and talk about our life together and lessons learned. And maybe next lifetime we'll all be here together and talk about lessons that we didn't learn. But let's hope we don't have to go that far. So, you know, there are certain universal aspects to life, and the most universal of all, as Swami said, is Sanatana Dharma, that God creates this world, projects it out of his consciousness, and it is the destiny for every aspect, every particle of that seeming separation to return back to unity together. And so that projection outward and then the return back is basically the purpose of life. Why God did it, you know, that's a question that we, especially in India, we get asked that question. Why did God create the universe? And generally in India, the answer, it's God's Leela, it's his dance, his play. I like Swami Kriyananda's answer better. God, the essence of God is joy, and it is the very nature of joy to want to share itself. And if there's only unity, there's no way to be able to share joy, so God creates the appearance of separation in order to share joy. Same is true for sharing love. You know, that there needs to be a separate universe in order for sharing to take place. Otherwise, it's all already shared. So that's kind of a strange concept, but you get the idea. In fact, you know, you've probably heard this story of Master asking Swamiji, why does the earth circle around the sun? And Swami said, oh, that's the... Swami, it was very new disciple at that time, thought Master was asking him for basic training in astronomy. And said, oh, well, it's the force of gravity, you see, that draws the earth toward the sun. And then Master said, well, then why doesn't the earth just kind of fall into the sun? And Swami explained very carefully to Master, well, it's the angular momentum of the earth going off that keeps it from being drawn in. And Master said, oh, thank you. And it took Swami months and months to figure out that Master was not asking him about a lesson in astronomy. It was an example of the relationship between the soul and God. Well, Master had already lectured on that years before. He'd talked about that in a lecture, used that illustration of the Earth and the gravitational force and the Earth trying to fly off, and how those two in balance with each other kept the whole ball game going. And so isn't it wonderful how the gurus work? I mean, Master could have set Swami down and explained that to him and told him what it is, but he wanted Swami to think about that question and then to come later to the realization that the universe and these universal laws apply on many, many different levels. And so the whole ball game is this projection out and then the return back into unity, projection out toward ever-increasing separation. And we find ourselves somewhere in an orbit in between those two, unity on one side, flying off into complete separation on the other side. And we find wherever that our natural orbit is. By the time we're on a path like this, our orbit is very, very close to the sun. We're almost there, because there comes a time at which we consciously understand that the purpose of life is to let go of separation and come back into unity. Well, now relationships are a deep part of this pattern, this whole ball game. Everything is in relationship to each other, but humans in relationships to each other can either enhance the part of separation, and that's if either, or especially if both people in a relationship, doesn't have to be a marriage, can be a friendship, a monastery, a working relationship, anything that draws two souls together. If one or the other or both of them emphasize the separation part by thinking me, 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 I've got to get my wants and my needs met, then it creates more separation and more discord and disharmony. And if one or both, especially if both, start thinking, let's try to reduce the separation. Let's not think of me, let's think of us. And that's one of the things that Master said, is that he warned about the problem in families of us four and no more. So the father, mother, and the two kids, thinking only about us creates a separation between that little family unit and the whole world beyond it. So he said we have to break that down in ever-widening circles. So there are certain threads that weave themselves through all of life. One of those threads, as I say, I have been talking about, is this whole drama of separation and unity, the whole influence. Then when we come consciously on the spiritual path, then everything can either enhance the movement toward unity or continue the momentum trying to fly us off into space where we're completely separate, continue that momentum and draw us off. And so what we'd use as a counterbalance to that is, first of all, sadhana, because the whole attempt of meditation is to calm the mind and calm especially the likes and dislikes of the heart, the yogas chitta vritti nirod, as Patanjali says, as we calm those likes and dislikes. This morning in the calendar, Sri Yukteswar is talking about the different planes of, physical, astral, causal planes. He said everything is functions around desire. So all of those three planes are held together or held into existence by desire. So that desire can either be desires that separate or desires that unify. And so a healthy relationship with healthy sadhana in it, sadhana is the attempt to calm the desires, calm the mind enough so that Master defined meditation as deep concentration on God or on one of the qualities of God, one of those 8 qualities. And so deep concentration on those universal aspects allows us to see that that's our nature, not the separate ego and that momentum that draws us out. So there's this kind of vast play going on. Then within that play, we get to the point where we really want or desperately want unity. Then we begin a life of sadhana. When that ripens enough, we draw a path like the path that we've drawn, where we have a true avatar in this great teaching. Now, within all of that, all of the aspects of our life, job, home, church, all of those, family, they all play a part, and they can all move us toward that unity or move us outward toward separation. But marriage can be, or relationships between a couple, can be a great, a great way, a great mode of living that allows the breakdown of ego when a marriage or a partnership is done correctly. It's wonderful for breaking down the ego. And especially if God is included as a central part of that. And so Devi and I will talk about our time together. But yesterday was the day of our 50th wedding anniversary. So we have known each other for like 56 years, been married for 50 years, and out of those 50 years, there's probably not been a single day where either one of us have not meditated, and except for when we were physically separated, there probably has not been a single day where we haven't meditated together. And so that seeking God together weaves a life in so many different ways, which we'll talk about. Then the final thing that I'll say is the final part of this universal picture, and what makes it possible and feasible is that increasingly a person, as they mature spiritually, wants God's will to inform or to direct their own individual will. Because you get to the point where you know that left to your own devices, you're just going to mess things up again. And so you want to align your will with the will of God or the will of Guru. In our life, the spoken voice of all of that was generally Swami. And so what we did in our life was to align our life choices, our will, from the very beginning. Those of you who read the blog last week of Devi's, she said at one time, we were talking with Swami, and this was some years after we were married, and she said, well, Swami was talking about the advantages of arranged marriages. We were in India. And Swami said, generally, everything has pluses and minuses. But generally speaking, arranged marriages end up being happier marriages. And Devi said, well, Swamiji, you kind of arranged our marriage. And he said, what do you mean, kind of? I did arrange your marriage. So those of you who know the story, Devi and I had known each other for several years, many years, 6 or 7 years. Then I was thinking of getting together with her, but she said, well, I don't want to do anything that wouldn't have Swami's approval. Why don't you go and talk to him about it? So I went and I said, Swami, I was thinking of asking Devi out on a date. And he said, why bother with all that? Why don't you just get married? And so that was his arranging our marriage. So 3 weeks later, we were married. So we never did have that date. She keeps reminding me. I have to tell you that. So anyway, this whole drama of being together, of working together, of worshiping together, it produces a really beautiful life. And whether you're in a committed relationship with another partner, or whether you're not, you're still in relationship. You're in relationship with those around you. Ultimately, you're in relationship with you and God. And so being together with another person is a good learning experience for that ever-deepening relationship with God. So Devi will speak a little bit, and then we'll shift.
Swami would, when he would give a long talk, he would usually start by being very, very abstract and broad. And he called it, that's the part of my talk, of the cosmic gases. And then it kind of materialized. And so Jyotish did mainly the cosmic gases part, and yes now. And then practical aspects, you know, we've all heard the statement, the yogi can stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. Well, this morning, Jyotish got up from meditation, and I hadn't quite finished yet, and all of a sudden we heard this huge crash, and it was the crash of breaking shelves. And in our little pantry where we had little nice gifts of applesauce and little preserves that people had given us, that shelf had fallen off, and we got out of meditation, there was broken glass and applesauce and preserves all over the pantry floor. We said, oh, okay, we have to clean this up now. And so that's part of life, very much a part of life.
How are we prepared for a talk?
Yes, how we prepared, picking the glass out of the applesauce. But sometimes you wish you didn't have to use words. You wish you could just project thoughts, because they're so much subtler than words. But for me, as Jyotish said, Swami arranged our marriage. I had asked Swami a few years after I got here, when virtually all of my women friends had become nuns. He had started a monastery. And I said, Swami, should I think of getting married or becoming a nun? And he paused and he said, your karma could go either way. Let's just see what happens. And then 5 years later, or 4 years later, I asked him again. And because I felt a shift. I felt a shift in myself. And at that, it was really a dilemma for me, which I should do. And then at that point, I really didn't care. I just wanted to get on with my life. And so I asked Swami again, and I said, 4 years later, I asked him the question so as not to nag him. I said, Swami, should I think about getting married or becoming a renunciate, a nun? And he paused, and he said, no, you should marry. And I said, do you have any suggestions who? And he said, what about Jyotish? And I said, well, there's really nothing between us. He said, let's just see what happens. And then 2 days later, Jyotish approached me and he said, I'd like to get to know you more personally, and you heard the rest of the story. But I say that because life is a dream. It's not our dream, it's God's dream. And if you try to run after something, oh, I really want a partner, I really want a family, I really want this, it's like sand between your fingers. But if you just say, God, whatever you want. We have a dear friend in India who was her daughter just graduated high school, and she was very anxious because she'd applied to colleges and wasn't getting accepted anywhere. The whole family was kind of upset about it, and she called us quite upset. Oh, I'm so worried, and we're all so worried. And we said, just give it to God. It's not anything under your control. And we talked at length with her, and afterwards she wrote us and said, oh, I feel so much better. A few weeks later, her daughter was accepted in one of the 2 colleges she really wanted to go to. And she just said, thank you so much for helping me to understand to let go. And I say this to all of you. Some of you may be seeking a relationship, some of you may not, some of you may be seeking friendship or a meaningful way to serve or a community to belong to. But all the different aspects of your life, we have no control over that. It's just what comes. It's what God, particularly if you're trying to live in God and for God, you just accept this is what comes. And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. And if you're really all revved up, I've had this happen a number of times. Oh, please God, make this happen. And then it doesn't happen. And then years later you realize that would have been a disaster if that had happened. And so just to surrender your life. And then when we get to, there's 4 points I want to kind of have fun with. When we get to talking about relationships and marriage, partnerships, to see how the human aspect of it is a little quiet echo of the divine aspect, because our human relationships, how we handle them with children, with parents, with friends, with partners, with pets, whatever it may be, it's just a little reflection of what our relationship with God should be. Because Master said something so beautiful I read recently. He said, most spiritual teachers and yogis say, do not be attached. Don't be attached to anyone. Master said, I teach the opposite. I said, you must be attached, but not to the person, to the God in the person. And he said, if you're attached to that, it's a path to liberation. And so our human relationships are little miniatures, like little doll houses where there's little furniture and little knives and forks that you put on the table. It's like a little doll house of what our relationship with God should be. And then there's, as I said, there's 4 points that how our relationships are miniatures of our relationship with God. The first is, there's 4, staying in touch, staying centered, staying positive, and staying in love. And so the first one, staying in touch. So this means communication. In a friendship, in any relationship, I'm not going to list them all the time, we'll just say relationships. To have, on a human level, to share, to communicate, good or bad, to tell people what you're going through, to let them know when something wonderful has happened or something terrible is happening, to let them know if you're really in a crummy space. And I know this is a bad attitude, but this is where I am right now. Don't be afraid to communicate and to share and to stay in touch. And in subtle ways and in big ways, in fun ways and secret ways. We don't do this anymore, but we used to do this thing where we would hide acorns in each other's like shoe or pocket of the jacket or in their glasses case. All of a sudden you'd be getting out your glasses and an acorn would pop out. And we would just, it was just a way of saying, I think about you. I want to amuse you. I want you to be happy. And so to stay in touch, to communicate, to just build a bridge. That's the most important thing in a lifelong relationship is to lay little bricks which create a bridge across the separation of 2 egos, 2 self-identities. You lay those little bricks in place, and then you both start walking on them. And then you have to keep that bridge in good repair, because the bricks will fall out if you aren't mindful of it. So the path to God requires everything we've got. Harmonious, happy relationships also require everything we've got on a human level. And so just as we need to stay in touch and communicate with each other, we need to do it with God all the time. Look at that beautiful flower. Oh my gosh, God, did you see that? Look how the little buds are coming out on the trees. Thank you, God, they're so beautiful. His wonder is everywhere. And to just have that communication all the time with God, appreciation and building that rapport. And I remember when Swami was still alive, one season when he was living at the Hermitage towards the end of his life, every night he'd call us down in the evening, we'd spend some time, then we'd be walking home up the steps from the Hermitage. There's like a little, I'd never seen it before, a glowworm. Have you ever seen a glowworm? Unbelievable, little neon worm that would be there every single night for weeks and weeks. And it was just like Divine Mother saying, look how fun life is. So to stay in touch with each other and with God. And the more you build those bridges with another person, the more you build it with God. Because it's the same thing. It's like sharing from inside with a greater reality. So staying in touch. Second one is, and it seems like the opposite, but it's not, is to stay centered in yourself. So whatever happens, you don't have to react. Maybe your friend, maybe your partner did something crazy, something maybe even that hurt you, something inconsiderate. You stay centered in yourself. You don't have to react. That's the real reality, even in a relationship. And if I'm going to say, I think that's the most important thing. And that's why we'll talk about this more. But we both we're fortunate that we had been on the path, Jyotish for 8 years, me for 6 years, before we got together. So we were used to living alone. We were used to being centered in ourselves. And then when you get together with another person, that being centered in yourself is so important, because you cannot let your relationship define you. The only thing that defines you really is your relationship with God. Your relationship can enhance your ability to go to a higher level of consciousness. But I know I'm more of an extrovert, Jyotish is more of an introvert. And I recognize much more often, he needs much more often than I need to be quiet and alone and not to talk. And it took me a while to see that, but then I finally got it. And it's got nothing to do with me. But to be centered in yourself and to allow the other person to be centered in their self, to allow the other person to be thoughtful and withdrawn and quiet if they want, or in seclusion if they want. But the necessity of being your own person. And it's only from that point of self-identity, of being centered within yourself, that you form a deeper connection with God. As long as you're, oh God, do you love me? God, will you do this for me? Yes, we want to communicate, but from a place of stillness, from a place of centeredness within yourself. And not to, if he doesn't answer, if God or she, Divine Mother, doesn't answer, just to know, I know you're there. I know you're there. And you don't have to be, bye-bye. I know dear sweet Narani wrote and said, I don't think I'm upset. I have to leave for an appointment halfway through. So she's leaving. But just to really work on that ability to be centered in yourself. And for those of you who have children or may have children, it's very important with children, not because they're all over the place, and just you stay centered in yourself. Whatever, they're up, they're down, they're doing all sorts of things that you might not think are a good idea. Those of you who work with high school kids know the syndrome. But just you stay centered in yourself. Those of you who have special needs kids, you stay centered in yourself. You can't let them pull you into their erratic behavior. Those of you who are dealing with partners or friends who on the opposite end of the spectrum, maybe they're going through dementia or Alzheimer's. You stay centered in yourself. That's the biggest gift you can give to others, is that ability. Nothing you can do will change me. My love for you is, it's there, it's present. Nothing will take away. So staying in touch, but then staying centered in yourself. And then, let's see if I don't forget, staying positive. How often in my life and in the lives of people that come and talk with us, oh, this terrible thing is happening. There's a person at work that's so difficult to deal with, or, oh, I'm going through health challenges, or, oh, we don't have money, or all the things. I mean, we could make a long, long list, all the things that could go wrong. And you know what can go right? There's only one thing, to stay positive. No matter what happens, no matter the crash of breaking shelves, you just stay positive, no matter what. And, you know, there have been times, we'll talk more personally in a bit, but where we've gone through hard times. I don't think any relationship on any level can avoid that as long as you're not in bliss all the time. And I remember one time, it had gone on for several weeks, that we were just kind of, you know, like, it was not harmonious, let's just put it that way. And then finally, I started to get a little worried, and finally Jyotish, in his calm, impersonal vision, expanded visionary way, said, you know, we've been having a hard time, it'll pass. And as soon as he said that, it was over. You know, just to get a perspective on it. So to stay positive, to no matter what happens, and to see, if you're going through a hard time, and we say this to people so often, ask yourself the question, what am I supposed to learn here? Not, please change this. Gyanamata said, change no circumstances, change me. And so to keep that positive flow of energy, no matter what. And you know, sometimes those of you who are familiar with Ananda know this has not been, you know, an easy stroll down a beautiful garden path. This path of building Ananda has been strewn not only with rocks, but with boulders and with barricades. And we've had to just stay positive no matter what happened. And, you know, we had these lawsuits that we fought that lasted 10 years, back and forth. And then we had a great celebration at the end when we came up victorious. But we had a meeting with the lawyers, and I've told this before, it was the only time in my life that I saw 3 lawyers, this was in the teaching temple at the Expanding Light, 3 lawyers crying. And they were all up there and they said, we can't, especially John Parsons, the one who'd been with us from the beginning. He wrote the book, The Fight for Religious Freedom. And he was crying, and he said there were so many times when I thought this was over, that Ananda would just be rolled up and plowed under. And he said, I worked with you all, and you never, ever were defeated. No matter what decisions came, you just kept moving forward. And he said, working with you all has changed my life. And to find that ability to, and it's all built to standing in your own center, to be communicating with God, and then to be able, no matter what goes on, just say, God, this is from you. And particularly in relationships, to see, even the difficult times, just to see what am I supposed to learn here? What is my part in this? It's so easy to say, oh, well, boy, they really need to change. But it's not that simple. We're here to transcend our limitations, and relationships are a perfect milieu in which to do it. And so staying positive all the time, and then finally and how does this relate to God? Well, just to, again, be a child of God, whatever comes. You know, I accept this. This is from you. And if it's from your hands, then it's from your love. And I'm not pushing it away, no matter what. And Swami Kriyananda was, we told this, but he was just amazing with his health and all that. He was constantly being challenged, his health, ever since we knew him. And even when he was a young man, it didn't just happen in his old age. And one time, we were in America, he was in India, and in the community outside of Pune, Miriam was there. She was taking care of him. And he went into kidney failure, and they had to take him into the hospital and put him on dialysis, which he was, mid-80s at the time, not an easy thing. And so we called up Miriam just to get a feedback. We were here in America, how's it going? How's it going? And she said, would you like to talk with Swami? I'm standing in his hospital room right now. And we said, if we could, that would be wonderful. And so here's this 85-year-old man on dialysis, just passing through kidney failure, just tubes everywhere. And he gets on the phone and he says, well, they tell me I look like a plate of pasta. Because he's just laying in this bed of tubes and noodles, and we just laughed. I mean, what? Just to see always the joy in everything. The joy. Not just positive, but the joy. And if you can build your marriage, like yesterday, it was so lovely. We had planned we were going to go to town. Oh, it's going to be raining. Well, we'll go anyway. Just do some fun little things in town. As soon as we got on the Tyler Foot Road, the rain stopped, the sun came out. We had a really nice day. We did everything we wanted. As soon as we were driving back on Tyler Foot Road, the rain started again. And it was just like, oh, thank you, Divine Mother. Finally, staying in love. So quoting the beautiful song, what is love? What is love? Is it only ours? Or does love whisper in the flowers? Surely we, children of this world, could not love by our own powers. The ability to love does not come because this person's really just what you were looking for. The ability to love comes through us from God. It's His power. And once you start opening up that floodgate by having a harmonious, committed relationship, that love just flows through you unlimited. Yesterday we went to the plant nursery in town because when we were staying in Italy at the home of Shanti Dev and Radhika, they had these beautiful little lavender bushes, and we'd go out every morning and we'd rub the lavender between our hands and as we energized, and it just filled our brain. So we wanted to get little lavender bushes. So we went into the nursery, and it was so much fun. There was hardly anyone there because it was early-ish. And so we found some nice little lavender bushes. And then the man was checking us out, and I looked at him. He didn't look American. He had very light skin, very light blue eyes, blonde hair. And I said, where are you from? And he said, Switzerland. And then he said Bern, the city, Bern. And it was just so charming because we said, we were in Bern. Our friends lived there and we gave programs there. And we said, we went to a yodeling concert there. And we started talking about yodeling. And it was just like this whole door opened up. So to stay in love, not just with another person holding hands with the hearts and all that, but to stay in love, to live in love all the time, and to share it with whoever needs it. That's the gift of God. And you learn it by, if you can, by a committed relationship or friendship. Some of you, it's not your destiny to be married. And I know those of you, there's a lot of young men in yellow sitting in the back who are kind of filtering this all out. But everything I'm saying applies to you living in a monastery. It's all the same. It's transcending the ego. And part of staying in love, and I'll conclude with this, Master said, loyalty is the first law of the spiritual path. And it doesn't just mean, the way people traditionally think about being loyal in a marriage or something like that. it's being loyal to the God and the other person. So if the other person is going through a dark period, a confused period, a troubled period, you're loyal to the highest in them. You let them talk, you let them gripe, whatever it is, but you're loyal to who you know they really are. And, Master gave an example. It doesn't mean to support their darkness. He said to one of his disciples, he said, you need to be more loyal. And she said, well, aren't I loyal, Master? And he said, well, you are in a way, but if someone would come up to you and say, oh, I saw Yogananda drunk the other day, you'd say, oh, really? And to be loyal is to know who the other person is and to hold them up and to hold their back no matter what they're going through, and just to say, nothing changes. Nothing you can do will diminish the God, my perception of the God in you. And so it's so important to staying in love, living in love, being committed to the highest truths of our path, and to staying in love with God means to say, whatever comes in life, I am yours. I am your child from however you want to use me. Jyotish, and I'll close with this, and then we'll both come up, we'll rearrange the set. I have to tell you a bad joke about sets. When we were filming the movie Finding Happiness, we had a film crew, director, and set and makeup and all that from Hollywood. We were able to get these very, very fine people, and we'd be filming part of it. We had a little part, but many people from Ananda did. And so we'd be filming, and then all of a sudden the director, Ted, would say, makeup, and they'd come and they'd comb our hair, or fix our shirt, or something like that. And then, or if something didn't look right in the set, he'd set, and they'd come and they'd rearrange the table. So there's a scene where, with Elizabeth Rome, who played the reporter, we were walking up the steps to the Sangha office, and we were talking about Ananda, and they were filming it. And then we got to the top of the steps, and a dog had been there before us and had left a rather large gift. And we got to the top of the stairs, and the director said, set! And this Hollywood set had to come and clean up all the deposit from the dog. So we will be changing the set here in a minute without the aid of the Hollywood producers and directors. But just to say, in conclusion of this part, oftentimes, Jyotish and I have the role, and we're as many in Ananda are, we're public figures, and we have to teach, and sometimes people say, oh, you have to, why don't you go away on a vacation for your anniversary? We had a few days last week where we did have a vacation, but our life is sharing. That's what God wants us to do. And so what better way? We're serving God by doing this, and we're closer to God by doing this. Vacations are nice. I like vacations, but I like serving more. So anyway, we're happy to do this. And sometimes I was just thinking this the other day. I was looking at the end of meditation at Master's picture, and I just thought, I don't know who I am, God. I was a little girl who was looking for something more. I looked at the world around me, nice family, nice environment, but I just thought, this isn't for me. And I didn't know what was for me, though, but I knew just that life wasn't my life. And then Master brought me to Ananda, brought me to Swami, brought me to this beautiful family. And he just said, if you want to, there's things you can do. And you will grow by doing them. And that's really what all of our life is. There are things we can do to serve God through our relationships, through our service, through our music, through our helping others, through cooking, through publishing books, through many, many, many ways. But God found us, He's using us, and ultimately if we can join with relationships and friends and family along the way, it's even sweeter. And then at the end, we just say, okay, God, I did what you asked. I'm ready to come home now. So I hope we can all do this together. So,
Okay, set.
set.
I think what we'll do now is we'll talk about kind of different phases in our life and some of the lessons that we learned or tried to learn during those times. Devi mentioned, first of all, that we were here at Ananda for 5 or 6 years before we got together. And that was a very, very important phase of our life because several things happened. First of all, we got very committed to doing our sadhanas, so that meditation became absolutely central. And there were, when we weren't in a relationship, there were fewer, I don't want to say distractions, but fewer kind of minor obligations that prevented us from meditating however long we wanted to meditate, wherever we wanted to meditate, and so on. So getting our sadhana established, but even more so, I would say, was getting our service established. Because really life in those days was very simple. You did your sadhana and you served, and that was pretty much it. And getting very centered in those two was a very important stage. Now we try to replicate that a little bit. Here in this community, we have Chandi House so that people who are entering into the community have a way to live together, because in the early days at the village here, we all supported each other in our sadhana, even though it was separate. So having support to establish that deeply rooted and deeply committed sadhana is very important, because without it, the spiritual life really isn't going to go very far.
Say about when you lived in the tent and it was raining and...
Oh, so at the very early stages, it was, let us say, more primitive than it is now. The only thing that existed when we came here was the farmhouse. And so in the first year or so, a couple of people lived in the farmhouse, but it was the kind of the only community center. So all of us lived various places, and generally speaking, Devi lived in a tree house. There was a tree house in one of the trees in the market lawn, and so she lived in a tree house. I lived in a tent up kind of where, I don't know where the monastery is now, up on the hill there. And so it was fine during the summer. You know, Swami and I had moved here in April, and the weather started turning nice. And then once we signed the papers, got everything officially, it was ours, July 4th, 1969. Then Devi said, the nest is ready, I'll come. So she came in July. So April, May, June, July, September, it was all very nice. Come October and the rain started coming. Well, living in a tent, a relatively primitive tent for the rainy months, when the rain would come for 4 or 5 days at a time and the big storm would come and the wind would be howling, well, the tent got saturated, being canvas, got saturated with water, and then the wind blew I said at one point, I felt like one of those vegetables at Safeway that gets misted. You know, my sleeping bag was soaked, everything, you know. But then we figured out, Sadhana Devi helped, and we made teepees, and teepees were wonderful. Then I loved living in a teepee, and then I had to move to a 44-room mansion in San Francisco. I preferred the teepee, but you do what you need to do.
So just talking about developing sadhana before marriage, it's important. I'm very, very grateful we had those 6 years as individuals to just define our life on our own. What's important? What are my goals in life? And as Jyotish said, it was often the physical environment was so challenging. It wasn't always easy. When I was living in a teepee, there was this little feral cat that, some of you have heard this story, but others not, a little feral cat that lived outside just in the woods. And I thought, well, I'll see if I can befriend that cat. So I got some little dry cat food and I put it outside the teepee flap. And after a while, I could hear the little kitty out there eating it. And then I thought, okay, I'll bring it. And so then I brought it inside the teepee, and it would come in. And then we became friends. And so I'd be sitting meditating on my foam pad, which was my bed, with a picture of Master there. And sometimes she would come while I was meditating. She'd curl up on my lap. And I just kept meditating, but I could feel her and hear her purring. And one day, this happened. I was meditating, my eyes were closed, and I could feel her on my lap. And then I opened my eyes, and she looked up at me with so much love, and she said, "Look what I brought you." And there was a dead rat. And breakfast. Anyway, so it was not without its challenges, but it was wonderful because everything else was stripped away. And all you had was service and sadhana. And I think that theme still is very basic to Ananda. And then we got married. By this time, Jyotish had built a geodesic dome, it was his bachelor home. Very, very simple, very simple. And I won't go more details, but what he liked to do in the evening, he had a little aluminum folding chair, nylon strips, and a little propane lamp that he screwed onto the wall. And he would just sit there in the evening in his little folding chair with the propane lamp reading. But I think it was when the first week.
First week.
You can say that.
The aluminum chair collapsed. And the propane lamp fell down and broke.
First week after we were married.
Yeah, first week after we were married.
That way of life was gone.
Yeah. So let's make sure you understand. The old ways are gone. We're going to move them aside and start a new system here. So, but I don't know in retrospect, it sounds like, oh, that must have been a struggle or that must have been a sacrifice. When you're going through it, you're just going through what's in front of you. So the tent leaks, well, we better do something about it. If the roof leaks here, well, we better do something about it. It just, you go through those things. They don't seem like they're unusual. Life just presents you with what it presents you. And as Devi said, if you stay positive and you stay focused on what you're trying to do, which is to serve Master, to create a world brotherhood community, the first of its kind, then the challenges are just part of the job description. There aren't anything unusual, but they make good stories 50 years later.
So then we got married.
And as anyone who has gotten married, there's an adjustment. You have to, you're used to walking along, and now you have to learn to dance together with another person. And so that makes a change. And so we were learning to live together harmoniously, and we did. And it was wonderful.
And Swami tried this, not everybody knows this. I think actually Lakshman told us this. I didn't know it either. But Lakshman said he was talking with maybe it was a group of the monks, and he said if Jyotish would have become a monk, Ananda would have become a monastery. If he would have married, it would have become a community. And anyway, so we began that path. And in many ways, it was new to both of us. I think we both had lives as renunciates for a long time. And it was like, oh, okay, so now we do this together. But I think we both have very adaptable natures. So it wasn't hard. But I think Swami always had in the back of his mind that our marriage had a purpose. It wasn't just so we could, have fun together, which we did, but that wasn't the only thing. And so then shortly, a year and a half after we were married, then we had a family, we had a son. And that, for me, that was the biggest impact, less so for Jyotish, because everything changed then. My ability to meditate I had never not meditated, and all of a sudden I couldn't meditate at all. Our son as an infant, had such a nature that anytime, 24 hours in the day, whenever I would try to meditate, I thought, okay, he's gone to bed now. He would wake up and start crying. And someone later explained to me that he felt your energy withdrawing and he needed you to be in this here, present. And so he brought you back. And so it was a huge challenge. And I know a lot of the young mothers who are here at Ananda now and in the past and in the future, it's a big adjustment to balance being a parent and being a devotee. But I also have to say, I think I learned more about giving up the ego by being a parent than anything I've ever done in my life, because there's no choice. The child always has to come first. The child's needs always. With a marriage partner, it can be a little more balanced, but with a child, it's not. And so again, being a parent as a path to God, of giving up the self, of trying to think of another person's happiness instead of your own. And then shortly after...
Well, just let me add a footnote here, or a little comment, that, it was our son's karma to be born to us, but also it was our son's karma to be born, and then 10 days after being born, to have a fire take away any sense of stability in an outward sense. So our house was taken away, our possessions were gone, and we were just kind of floating. It was, you can't say we were like homeless parents because we had the whole community, but we didn't have any localized place. So I think whether it was his nature or whether it was that initial experience, all he had for a home was us. And so, especially if Devi withdrew in meditation, I think he was more sensitive to all of that happening. But it was, Devi touched on it, but I really think that not only did we incarnate individually, but we came together, and not for the first time. We've been together for many lifetimes, but we came together in this lifetime, inextricably woven together with the creation of community, with the creation of Ananda. And we've played roles in that. And so one lens through which we can view all of the experiences that we've had is that they helped build the matrix of what community is. And so in this sense, one of the matrix of community is that you put God first, and you put sadhana first, and you put your service first, and your family is part of that, but it isn't separate from it.
And then the fire came, and we regrouped, and And then Jyotish built a new dome, which was quite nice.
Which is where Hridaya and Ramu live now. And then we had that for just about long enough to finish the interior, and then we had to move.
But I want to say one thing about the house that burned down. I've always loved plants. And we had a huge display of house plants, all different varieties. Jyotish he had a big window in the geodesic dome, and he built this little sandbox framed out with all the plants, and it was quite lovely.
For those who live here, the location of the dome that burned down is about where the Kretzmann, shop and so on, about there.
And so after the fire came and everything was gone, for a few days, I think you all know this, that the only thing we got out of the house I was leaving that morning to take the little baby for a checkup, and I looked in the meditation room and I thought, I haven't had time to clean it, it's kind of disordered. And I took everything off the altar, all the things that Swami had given us and things from India and precious relics, and I put it in a shoebox, and that was the only thing Jyotish got out of the house before it burned down. But this is just to talk about loss in life, because we lose friends, we lose parents, we lose et cetera, pets, whatever. And for a few days, I was very disoriented after the fire. And then I said, you got to get your head screwed on. And so I just sat by myself, the little baby was sleeping, and holding him. And I thought about every single thing in that house that was gone. Every plant, every flower, every towel, every blanket, every pot. And I thought about it, and then I gave it to God. And at the end of that period, I was free. I could live in the present then. So life is about loss too. And when you're going through a loss, don't cling to the past. It only holds you back. Bring it consciously to your mind and give it to God, and then you can move forward. And so
certain things survive, The fire was so intense. You have to imagine flames as high as this building, sweeping through the forest, which it was at that time, in the brush. And so the fire was so intense that it not only burned the structure, but we had a wood stove in the little dome. It melted that wood stove. We went through the ashes afterwards. It's very sweet. One of the things that we found that survived the fire was a little cup.
Two
little cups, a little bit bigger than espresso cups, that Swami had given us as presents for our wedding. And they survived the fire,
cups.
Even though the fire was intense enough so that it bubbled the, whatever you would call it, the patina on the outside of a ceramic cup. But those two delicate little cups survived. So there are certain things that survive all disasters. One is the relationship with God and Guru. And the other is the love that is, those things that are eternal survive the ephemeral. Those things that are ephemeral can never survive the eternal.
So then, probably 2 years later.
Yeah, so our son hadn't turned 3 yet.
Swami decided it was time for us to do something else. And so he said, he said, I'm going to go to San Francisco for the summer and be teaching. And I want you both to come, and you can help through your little kid. And eventually I want to start an ashram here, which eventually morphed down to Palo Alto. That was the beginning of it. So at first he said, we'll just go for a weekend. So we brought a suitcase. And then he said, he didn't give us the whole picture right away. He just said, let's go and I'll give some programs. So we did that. And then he said, maybe we stay longer. Well, we don't have many clothes, Swami, we'll drive back. Oh no, don't drive back. Just have people bring you clothes. So we, garbage bag after garbage bag of our belongings. Once again, we were divested of everything, you know. And so then we lived in San Francisco. And again, it was marvelous because it was such a contrast from living. I didn't want to go at all, but I was very happy with my life here. But Swami asked us to do it. It's sort of like Parvati's book, Say Yes to Life, which if you haven't read it, it's a great book. It really captures that spirit of saying yes to whatever is asked of you, if it's for your highest good. And so we went down and we had so much fun. We found this, we were looking, first there were about, I don't know, 20 of us who went down initially, and we were living in a 2-bedroom house in the avenues, if you know San Francisco. Swami was living in a motorhome out front. We ran a big extension cord from the house to his motorhome, and we had people living everywhere. There were people living on the roof. There were people Jyotish and I, because we had a little kid, we got one of the bedrooms, but it had a big walk-in closet. Somebody else lived in the closet, and the people up on the roof, they said it was like, they called it Neo-Vietnam. So towards the end of Vietnam, when there wasn't much left, you know, so they just had, and you know, so that's where we were all living. And
one time, speaking of, you know, we had a bedroom, and for those who know him, Brian O'Hara's Santosh was living in the walk-in closet. And Devi and I had a discussion one evening.
Rather heated discussion.
Yeah, rather heated discussion. And Santosh got up in the morning, came out and stretched. He said, "Oh, I slept so deeply, I didn't hear a thing."
So then someone found one of the Swami began teaching, and it was marvelous. He drew the most wonderful people. Every Thursday he would give a satsang at the Unitarian Church in San Francisco, this really nice church. And and then he would do satsangs other days, and he just drew this wonderful group of devotees. And then when he realized the energy was strong, he said, I'm trying to see if anybody was here from that time. I don't think so, but you were already part of Ananda. I mean, I meant people who came from San Francisco. Yeah, Ram lived there too, but that was the core of Ananda people. Pardon?
Gopal.
Yeah. Oh, Gopal,
Yeah.
that's right. Gopal came from that. Wow. And a number of others. Anyway, we found this beautiful house that was for rent, 3 stories, 40 rooms. I mean, you know, here we were used to living, you know, almost, you know, very simple, very inexpensive. This was just the opposite of that in a very, very posh neighborhood. Our neighbors were not happy to have us there. I can tell you, they kept trying to find reasons to evict.
The house of Mrs. Doubtfire was down the hill from where we were. We were at the top of the hill with the view.
And right across the street from us was the house of the film director Francis Ford Coppola. And sometimes he would be having private screenings of a film, and so people would be driving up in limousines with mink coats, and we'd be walking down the street, you know, in our jeans, and kind of look at each
Carrying
other.
flats of strawberries.
Right.
I'm sure the people visiting his house thought we were the servants.
Anyway, it was a wonderful time, and a number of people, Parvati and Bent, then were there, or just Parvati. I think Bent wasn't there, and different ones came. But it was establishing Ananda's work in the Bay Area, and wonderful, wonderful people came. And it was so beautiful. And then, go ahead.
But I was going to say one of the lessons there is that you integrate your circumstances into your service, not the other way around. It's not like you add your service on to an ongoing life and this is my reality and I'll serve a little bit. No, your service is your reality. And whether you're married and have a little 3-year-old son or not, that just gets integrated into part of the service. So for the devotee, what's night for the worldly person is day for the devotee, and vice versa.
And as I said, wonderful people came, and this young family came who had a little boy. We had Big Ram living there, and this little boy's name was Ram, so he was Little Ram, and a beautiful little kid. So he and our son were friends and playmates in the house, and that was nice. But every night at dinner, we would have dinner together. During the day, people had different schedules, but every night at dinner, Little Ram would spill his milk, like clockwork, every night. And his dad worked, John was his father, John and Pam Lucas was the couple. His dad worked as some kind of a technician in a nearby hospital, respiratory therapist, I think. And so one night, John was tired, and Little Ram, as clockwork, spilt his milk, and John just didn't have the patience, and he slammed his hand on the table. He said, "I wish I could have dinner one night without you spilling your milk." And Little Ram, who was about 3 or 4, looked up at him and said, "Daddy, when you were the little boy and I was the daddy, I didn't get mad at you when you spilt your milk." Everybody just froze. And John got up and got the towel and cleaned up the milk.
Yeah, I don't know what he did, but one time our son, named Mark now, but then it was Kalidasa. Well, his middle name is now Kalidasa. In any case, he must have done something wrong, because he came up to Swami and he said, "Swami, do you like bad people?" And Swami gave a marvelous answer. He said, "I like bad people. Sometimes I don't like the bad things they do, but I like the people." And I think that settled him down, but a very, very wise and deep answer.
So we were there for a few years, and then it came time remember we were saying with family and community, it's always a balance. And our son had gone to preschool at a Montessori school, and then he started kindergarten at a Waldorf school. But we wanted him to be in the Ananda school. So we talked to Swami and we said, we think we need to come back to the village. And he said, that's fine. He always, and so other people came and took over San Francisco House. And then we came back and served here for a while. We were asked to teach the 3-month yoga teacher training course. It was at that time 3 months. And we didn't have any background in it, really. And just say what Swami said to you when he asked you to do the advanced course.
My first course on my own was in San Francisco. So I'd been with Swami taking a series of courses. We had started an ashram the very first, 6 months after I met Swami. There was a little ashram in San Francisco, but just a house with a couple of bedrooms. Anyway, Swami was giving courses in various places, and he would have 30, 40, 50 people. And he asked whether people would like an advanced course. And many people raised their hands. But when it came time, and the sign-ups came in, there were only 6 or 7 people that signed up. And Swami said, I just don't have time to do a 6-week course for just 6 or 7 people. Can you do that? So the advanced course. I said, well, Swami, I've never had an advanced course. I was supposed to teach advanced yoga postures. And he said, oh, it doesn't matter. Just do the same thing, hold them longer.
So any yoga teachers...
Close your... Of course I did more than that. I got new postures, but it forced me to study.
So then Swami asked us to teach the 3-month yoga teacher training. We were living at the meditation retreat, and there was no place for us to live. So we they said, well, you could live here and there. You could live in the dome where Swami lived, but it was not finished. The interior wasn't finished, and a lot of things needed to be done. And so
by this time it was like 1980, so he had moved down to Crystal Hermitage and left a kind of a slightly dilapidated and unfinished dome that he had been in before that.
So we said, well, okay, we'll take the dome. There's more space. All three of us can sleep. Jyotish and me and Kalidas could sleep up in the dome, in the loft. But it was so unfinished. And the yoga teacher training was starting in 1 week. So we had 1 week to renovate this house, just the two of us. There was nobody else to help. So it was amazing. Like, Jyotish had built several domes, so he had some experience. There's some pictures of us doing it. So we said, okay, Monday, we're going to cut out all the plywood or the plasterboard to go into the slots, the triangles.
Sheetrocking inside.
And so we'd start on Monday, and it'd be about 11:30, and we'd gotten like one of them done. We had that day to finish it. And so then we'd take a break for lunch, we'd come back, and then somehow we would go into a time warp between like 1:30 and 4:30, and the whole rest of it would be done. And every single day was like that. This day we're going to paint the whole interior. The first 2 hours we got a little bitty section, then we'd break for lunch, and so there was like this time extension. And in a week we got it all done and moved in, and we're living up there, and it was lots of fun. Do you want to tell the story about the lady with the slippers?
Well, yeah, but we were living up there. But if you ever visit Swami's dome up there, there's a big pine tree outside. That's a very sacred place. That's a burial place for Fishy and Wishy, the little fish that our son had.
And Apricot the hamster.
Apricot the hamster. Frodo the fire-bellied toad.
Yeah, they're all buried under that tree.
they're all buried there. Anyway, so we were living there, and one night had been snowing, and we heard this voice saying, "Help, help!" And Devi said, "You better go out and see what's going on." So I went out. The meditation retreat, of course, guests came. Well, a guest had come and got disoriented. So I went out, and here was this lady in a bathrobe with fuzzy slippers on.
Kind of a negligee.
Negligee.
Out in the snow.
Yeah, wandering through the bushes. I guess it wasn't snowing, it was just raining.
Raining real hard.
Yeah, raining. And shouting, "Help, help." So I went out to help her, and I was trying to take her back to her cabin. And she said, no, the reason I came out was I wanted to take a shower. I have to take a shower. So took her to the shower.
She was an
house.
Older, kind of heavy lady, just to kind of set the stage.
This kind of, think of a movie by Fellini, kind of bizarre, semi-subconscious dream. So we go up to the shower house, but no, she was chilly, so she wanted a cup of tea first. So had to make a cup of tea, go in, open up.
Meanwhile, I'm back at the dome wondering, it's been hours, and what, did they get eaten by wolves? What happened?
Yeah, so made a cup of tea, and she slowly drank her tea, and went and got a shower, and finally dried her hair, and finally was ready to go back. So like an hour and a half later, I come back, and Devi didn't know what in the world had happened. And I was just off on an adventure with the lady with the fuzzy slippers.
When he says fuzzy, the kind with the puffball and the high heels, like that, walking around in the woods. Anyway, so then we did that for a while. We had some wonderful times teaching the YTT. There was one woman, I'll always remember her. She was from Birmingham, Alabama, and she was a very sweet woman. And she said, we were asking the people why they came, And she said, well, one Sunday we got the Sunday newspaper, and there was a big article about yoga. And I read that, and I just started crying because I knew that yoga would never come to Birmingham.
So she came and got the training so she could bring it.
And then she went back and taught.
There was another fellow. We're just rambling here, but this is more entertainment than education. So there was after a 3-month series, kind of the graduation, people had to lead a yoga posture session. So there was one fellow who had a wonderful sense of humor. And he said, okay, led the yoga postures and then the deep relaxation. He said, okay, now lay down, breathe deeply, just relax, let everything go. Everything, just let it go. Now imagine that you're in a sunny meadow, in a forest, a sunny glen, and you hear a soft padding, and you realize that it's a tiger. Let it go. Let it go. Now the tiger is nibbling at your toes. Let them go. Let them go. I went through the whole body like that.
So after that time, somebody thought, well, they're pretty good at adapting. Let's send them far away. Let's send them to Italy. So then we went. He was starting to work there. By this time, our son was about 6, and so we went. And it was Ram was there, and anybody else was there with us. I don't think anybody who's still here, but who survived. But we were living in this. The summer was fine. It was this beautiful villa in northern Italy near Lake Como in a little town of Veglio. So it was a lovely villa that belonged to a devotee who let us use it. But then when the winter started to come, it was a summer villa. There was no heat, there was no insulation, and it was cold there. In the winter, those villas would just be closed up. And so there we were, and we couldn't speak the language. You know, when the phone would ring, we'd say, you answer, no, you answer, no, you answer. In those days, the washing machines in Italy didn't have a hot and cold water intake. There was just a heating unit inside that would heat up the water. Well, we had this very old washing machine in the garage, and so to try to keep warm, we all bought these nice warm wool sweaters. Well, and the washing machine was not bolted to the floor, so you never knew where it was going to be when you went in there. And we called it Mad Max because it would just kind of move wherever it wanted to go. But what it would do, it would get hotter and hotter and hotter. So we had all these beautiful wool sweaters that would just be boiled, and you'd come out and they'd be, like that big, and we could tell you many, many stories about those days, the first winter in Italy, that really are beyond belief. One time, we had a little donation box, which a few people would come on the weekend.
Just to finish the story about the little sweater, Devi got bronchitis. It was a rough winter. We called it the winter of St. Francis. So, we would instruct the guests, go up and take a piece of holy water from the altar.
Because it was frozen.
Right, because the holy water was frozen on the altar. Anyway, Devi had gotten bronchitis, and there was a wonderful woman, Judy Fox, who many of you knew, who lived with us then.
She was a chiropractor.
And she said, well, I'll prepare a kind of a mustard plaster for you, and then put the mustard plaster on and put the sweater over it. And so Devi tried to put this little sweater over.
She meant just put the wool
just
over
put
your
the
chest.
woolen sweater over the mustard plaster. But Devi
I
tried
thought
to
it was
put
like to keep the blood in your chest or something. Anyway, we had many adventures like that. Many adventures. And then when the spring came and the guests came, we had to give up all our room. So Ram lived in the tool shed, and we lived in the pipe room, kind of underneath the house, and the water would be dripping, the pipes, and would be dripping on you, no light, and then you'd have to get up in the morning and greet all the guests. Buongiorno, buongiorno.
Lead sadhana.
Yeah. Anyway.
But we better move on because
yeah, we're running out of time.
We're getting caught up in
okay.
fun
So
stories.
then we did Italy, and now there's Assisi, and centers all over Europe, just amazing, and
we also did the very first pilgrimage ever.
For
Ananda.
When we were trying to figure out how to raise money. Nayaswami Dhyana was there with us. And by the way, Nayaswami Dhyana will be coming April 5th to stay for several weeks, 6 weeks. Anyway, we were trying to, in that home, we were trying to just find places to live and so forth. And Dhyana.
But also trying to find ways to get some money because
right.
we were absolutely broke.
And so Jyotish said, why don't we have a pilgrimage and invite people to come from America, and we would organize it and they'd pay and we could earn some money. And Diane and I looked at him and we said, that is a stupid idea. No one will ever come on a pilgrimage like that. And then Jyotish, typical, he just didn't say anything.
Well, I've long been trained to have my brilliant ideas received with skepticism.
But somehow we got on board and we did the first pilgrimage, and it was glorious, just glorious. And we could tell many stories about that, but we don't have time. So then after Assisi, we came back to the village, and that's when we started the Sangha office and the outreach ministries, and it was just the two of us at first. And anyway, we're kind of running out of time, but
yeah, but that grew. So we're really talking here about phases. So the phase of outreach, the San Francisco house, then Assisi, and then it went on from there to India later on. But then we came back and we started the Sangha office because you can't physically spread out around the world. You have to do it with other means. And so that was before the internet. And so the Sangha office did a lot of mailings. We had magazines that we would send out. We had $1 a month club for people it was the kind of the first iteration of being a tithing member of Ananda and so on. So establishing all of the things that have now grown into a huge worldwide outreach was kind of the next adventure.
And then India happened, and Swami, there were other things along the way, but we were part of the team that went over initially.
Well, before that, though, there was the phase of the lawsuit.
Oh, my. Yeah.
And so there was, lawsuit started in 1990 and lasted for more than 10 years. And so there was a whole phase there where we had to carry on everything going on at Ananda, but also focus on basically the fight for religious freedom. Because you cut away all of the fluff, and what was at stake there was SRF basically felt that they had a monopoly on Master's teachings and on Master, and that only they were the proper channel, and that we were intruders, and that not only should we not be giving Master's teachings and using his name, but that we were doing so only for egoic self-promoting reasons. Well, we had 10 years of fighting with millions and millions of dollars, while at the same time we had to carry on all of the other functions of the community. So that was a very important phase, but it established Ananda's right to truly spread Master's mission throughout the world. And without that, Ananda would have shrunk back just into a little group of people living the teachings but not sharing them.
And Swamiji said, even though they were primarily attacking him, he said, this lawsuit is for all of you. And I didn't understand it when he said that, but now I see it's so that you fight for Ananda's existence and you own it. And that'll enable it to continue forward. And that's, in fact, what happened. But one kind of humorous thing that happened, there were different lawyers that they used in opposition to us, but one was not a good man, Michael Flynn. And he was, I won't go into detail, but so the lawsuit was done, that part of it. We still had to finish some copyright stuff, but that part was done. And this Michael Flynn asked the judge, and the jury was going to be dismissed, it was a jury trial, if he could have one more day to try to drill down to see where we were hiding all the money that we had, which didn't exist. But anyway, and so the judge, who really was not very, anyway, he was not on our side, he gave him one more day. And so they said, okay, we'll have some witnesses, we'll have John Novak, we'll have John Smolin, and the man who was the head of the accounting at the time, and nobody else needs to come. So I thought, oh, okay, great. I'll stay at home. And those guys were driving down, and it was Roma's birthday. And we had planned a birthday party for Roma. I was so happy not to have to go down to that courtroom again. And then the phone rang, and it was Jyotish. He said, Flynn just said he wants you to come and testify too. And I said, I don't know anything about the finances. He said, you're on the list, you have to come. So I had to cancel the party. They had to drive back, pick me up. We were driving down, and the judge had just given them 3 hours, 9 to 12. And I knew he wasn't going to call me. I knew he was just being vindictive because there was nothing I could testify about. But I was just sitting there looking at the clock, and just like now, it was about 20 minutes to 12, and he only had till 12. And Latika was sitting next to me, and I just said, Latika, I can't stand to sit here one more minute. And she looked at me and she said, run, Toto, run. And I did. I just ran out of there. And he never was going to call me. But anyway.
Anyway, so then we got through the active phase, but then we had millions and millions of dollars to pay off. And so there was a big, long series of campaigns in order to do that. And at the same time, of course, we were reaching out more and more to the world. By that time, 2003, Swami had first he moved to Italy. He was living in Italy. Then he moved to India in 2003. And so for Devi and me, during all of this time, we were more and more active, not just being centered here, but really after the start of the Sangha office, our role became less village-focused and more focused on the world. So we were traveling a lot and teaching a lot and going all over the world. And we went to India for a while and helped get things established there.
And one little story before, so Swami was in his 87th year, was it, Lakshman? How old was he when he moved? 85th year, I think, when he moved to India.
No, 2003.
Three.
So.
Yeah, but so he called a small group over so that we would, and he wanted Dharmadas and Nirmala to stay and lead it. But it was so amazing and so instructive. The night before we were leaving, here he's leaving everything familiar, starting a new work, planning where are we going to live, what are we going to do. And he was packing. We were helping him pack. And it was
This was in Assisi.
in Assisi, in his home. And it was just like he was a little boy going on a camping trip. He just said, that's my favorite picture of Master. Put that in the suitcase. Oh, I really like that pillow. Put that in the suitcase. I mean, it was just the simplest, loveliest things that were familiar and close to him. And there he set off, going off on this big adventure with this picture of Master, and which we it kind of got, after Swami passed, it kind of got lost in the wayside, but we recognize that if there's that picture of Swami sitting in his room in Gurgaon, waving incense around a picture of Master. Anyway, we rescued it from obscurity and gave it to Aditya, so Aditya has it now, Nayaswami Aditya. But I'll just close with that, because what we've been talking about is the adventure of our life, and nothing was planned, seemingly. It was just all a flow of God's grace and service to God and devotion to God. And yet, just that last, watching Swami pack to go on, the last big stage of his life, just taking a few simple things. Not, well, we need our passports, and we need this, and blah, blah, we need our financial records. None of that. Just simple love of God. And that's what Ananda is. It's what our life has been. It's what got us through fires and floods and lawsuits, and the simplicity of life, a life given to God. And I'm just very grateful, and this is the last thing I'll say, and Jyotish can close. I'm very grateful to each and every one of you who has been a part of this adventure and who has understood the importance of what we're doing here. And I'm very grateful to the beauty that you bring on all levels, plants and gardens and monasteries and music and everything you do. And I'm very grateful to my divine friend Jyotish, who he's just been the best friend I could ever imagine, and exactly what I needed in this life to help me find God. Thank you all.
And it's mutual. So I'll just maybe end by saying, setting aside the little incidences, because they're just expressions of the essence. The essence is that if you want a happy life and a successful life, if you want a happy marriage or a happy relationship and a successful one, give your life to God first, because really there's nothing else going on. You're only relating to God, and anything that you think is different is delusion. And so you give your life first to that relationship with God, and everything else works out. But it never looks like it's going to work out. Otherwise, God wouldn't be having any fun. Why sit through a movie that you've seen 20 times? It has to seem like a whole new movie every time. But if you sit there enjoying the movie, enjoying life, enjoying a partnership, enjoying a marriage with God and for God, then it becomes a beautiful adventure. And if you don't, as Master said, it becomes anything else but beautiful, or everything else but beautiful. And so successful life is a life lived for and with God. And if you have a partner to share it with, all the better.